Hello, hi everyone. Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, it's great to have you. I think we can pretty much allow, just about 2 or 3 more minutes before we start. So
Okay,
please bear with us.
all right, no problem.
Okay, so it's great to have you guys join us once again. So I'll be turning on my video just for a moment, and then once we start the session properly, I can then turn it off. So my name is Taiwo. I believe that a couple of you already knows me. I take one of the classes, and especially the online class, so it's really a good opportunity for us to reconnect once again. Um the this session or the initiative, which is the Alumni Meetup, was actually conceived to, allow us or enable us to continuously engage you, to keep in touch, stay in touch, to help you, understand some of the new, pretty much some basic new initiative that comes out within analytics, and share with you, and help you understand how much of an impact it can have in your journey, um, you know, in your journey leveraging and analytics. The idea of this topic, which is designing income statement in Power BI, it came up when we wanted to pick the topic or the theme for this event, and we said, so we're looking at what is that thing. Obviously, a lot of us actually have an idea of the fact that analytics is pretty much a commercial thing, right? Or in some instances, operations, because largely, a data analyst usually, at least as far as Nigeria is concerned, a data analyst usually, belong to the commercial function than the IT function. So, so this income statement in Power BI. So it happened that I did an interview some times ago, and one of the questions I asked was, is data is I mean, we're having conversation from back and forth, and it now happens that there seems the body language seems to be talking about, of the interviewer seems to be talking about, the job role also involves designing financial statement, and that was the first time I would hear that, data analysts actually get involved in designing financial statements. So I'm, especially BI developer. So it caught my attention, and I needed to confirm again just to be sure they knew what they were saying. So that was when it was done on me that the responsibility of the data analyst seems to be excuse me. All right. The responsibility of the data analyst seems to be, be gearing towards designing income statement as well. So this is just a great opportunity for us to have an idea. If we haven't, I know a couple of us must have, continued with with learning, and we must have actually come across such concept in terms of designing financial statement in Power BI. So it's pretty much a new concept. Might not be a new concept, but in terms of the adoption, seems to be pretty much low because over time analytics has been, or can I say financial statement is pretty much a consultant thing, right? I'm a data analyst. I'm not an accountant or a financial consultant. So I may not know how to do this, or I may not be able to do this, but it has happened, or it appears to be, it appears to be that Microsoft, or can I see some of these vendors, including Tableau and Power BI, they seems to be, trying to integrate everybody into this, into their tools. So that was what bet the idea of designing income statement in Power BI. And the truth of the matter is that I can tell you that if you are able to, practice this after this session and you're able to implement it, trust me, there's a way you can actually skyrocket your employability value as a data analyst. So I think it's important that we pay a lot of attention to this. I mean, for today's session, I advise, because it's pretty much a new concept. It's not going to be straightforward. Oh, okay. I think I said a lot of Power BI trainers don't really talk about Power BI from financial modeling. Yeah. So honestly, it's one area that a lot of people run away from. But what I have noticed is that you probably find very low adoption of it in Nigeria. But the moment you step out of the shore of Nigeria, you find a lot of demand for it. In fact, they don't even mention it, but you just have to know that financial statement is part of the things that you're going to have to be building, right? Of course, you get the necessary support from the business stakeholders, which is finance. But I think what I think is important that you have an idea of the concept. Like I said, it's likely not going to be smooth, but it's important that you pay a lot of attention, and then you pay a lot of attention, follow through. You can practice on your own, and like I said, your value is going to skyrocket once you're able to do this, because once you're able to do income statement, then you should be able to do the remaining other ones, like the balance sheet, agent trial balance, cash flow statements, and the likes. So it's going to be an interesting session. So without wasting too much of your time, I think like I said, this is also another opportunity for us to converge again beyond just, helping you to, learn and understand one or two things. So if you feel free to, make any comment before we get started. If you have any comment, if you have any question, if you have any feedback, if you have anything exciting you feel we need to know, please feel free to take the mic and speak before we, get busy. All right, so I think we can just we can get started, right? So it's nice to connect once again. So I think at this stage I'm going to just turn off my camera and then we can just kick off. All right. So I will be, starting up my Power BI. Like I said, this is going to happen in, we're going to be using Power BI again today. Okay, that's very good. All right, so if you would, let's see what we can do together. Like I said, please pay attention. You can leverage our community. We have a WhatsApp community. We also have a, Discord community, whichever one is convenient for you. You can leverage our community to get help in terms of if you have questions after this session, like when you're practicing and you need help, you can just reach out. I will be available to help you. You might also be someone who must have been able to, resolve it, that would get, that will reach out to you and help you, right? So please take advantage of our community. We can always drop in your questions and they'll be able to help you. Okay, so I think I should, let me, please bear with me. I need to do something. So I think I still I just need to walk you through, this, right? All right, so in terms of housekeeping rule, please, of course, we all know the housekeeping rule. I'm going to read it out. So then also we do the proper presentation, income statement, and then can have a Q&A. Of course, we can also have any further conversation around some of the other opportunities that you can explore. And then we would close out possibly with a selfie, if only we can remember. Of course, the housekeeping rules remain the same. Please, let's pay attention, mute our mic all the time, stay present, and I think the meeting is being recorded. And it definitely would be shared with you at the end of the session. So in terms of financial reporting, I think it's important we start with this, right? So financial reporting is all about, it's usually a finance thing, especially, I think they call them FP&A or they call them payable. I think it's FP&A. I mean, those are the teams that are responsible for financial reporting, right? And I think the list are actually more than what I have here. I mean, I work closely at one of my former organizations. I work closely with finance, so I was able to understand some of the reports they do. I mean, at the time, our financial report was being handled by a consultant, and I remember the ERP we were using then was Sage, right? Sage Evolution, and we were using it for our finances. For our finance team, and so our financial reporting was now built in a tool called Crystal Report. So Crystal Report is let's just say like, it's not really Power BI, but but let's just say like Power BI, Power Query, something like that. So that's the way the tool looks like. And then so there are a lot of calculations you do that look like DAX query that you write. And then, they plug in into the tables. The tables is in SQL Server. Sage table is a SQL Server table. So they connect it to the tables. I know that one of the tables there is called a GL table, just general ledger, and then they have accounts. We have some other tables that you connect to, and then so once they connect to, they build the formulas and every other thing, and then then they are able to build the report. So there are multiple reports that was built then, right? So there's income statements, there is and I know some of these names can differ from organization to organization, and even from finance perspective, they change some of these names from time to time. So I know there's a time somebody said is statement of financial income or whatever it is. I mean, so sometimes, you probably in some organization, you might see the name, differ from what you probably will get to learn here, right? But so, I mean, these are some of the, some of the reports then was, cash flow, fixed asset and the likes and the likes. So this is just to give you an insight, especially for those who are not within the financial or the accountant, or are not an accountant, or you're not working within the finance space. So income statement is one of the reports an organization design, sometimes every month, for some organizations every year. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, it ought to be a kind of monthly exercise. So so there's income statements, there's financial details, which more like give a bit of revenue insight. There's balance sheet, and then there's cash flow. I may not be able to go deep into. Let me even, give a disclaimer. I'm not a finance person or an accountant, right? I practically just, felt, found myself trying to do this because I needed to learn it. Right, I found the need to learn it, and I had to learn it. So I may not be able to tell you what a financial balance sheet is, but what I know is that there's a template for all of this. I think the template can be sometimes generic from companies to companies, and most times, differ depending on how the organization, because an income statement for an airline may be different from an income statement for a healthcare company or an FMCG, but you probably will still see similarity in terms of what they are trying to achieve. So cash flow, extra balance, revenue insight, and so it might just be more than this, right? Depending on what they do. But I can tell you these are some of the main one and the basic one that you probably want to familiarize yourself with. But for the purpose of this training, we'll be focusing only on income statement, right? And what I know is that once you understand how to, run these, then the remaining ones should be a walkover for you, right? You will be able to, run the other ones. All you need to do is to get a template and then, run with it. So that being said, now the income statement which you want to pay attention to today, so in terms of the approach, what I've done is to highlight some of the approach, a kind of step-by-step approach we will take to arrive at what we want to do, right? So we're going to look at the data. It's a raw data. So the data we're going to be using is coming from Excel, right? But the truth is this: once you pull this data into Power BI from Excel and you clean it up to a point where it is ready for you to fit it into your financial statement template, or the income statement template, then what you need to do is that in a case whereby your data is in a database, let's say SQL Server database, right? Or it could be any database. Once you're able to achieve what you want to achieve by, fitting your data or getting your data, ready for the reporting, then what you can do is to, maybe leverage on SQL to bring in your data from your database in the format, right? Of course, you just require to join 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5 tables, or, use 3 or 4 or 5 tables to get information from there to achieve what you want to achieve. Because financial statement is pretty simple. Your income statement is pretty simple. It's all about, your revenue, getting all of the component of your revenue and your expenses. And most of the time in a database, you'll find almost everything sitting in about the same table or 2 tables, right? And all you just need to do is you'll be able to identify which is which, and then, query it out in a manner that is going to that is going to look like what you expect, right? So we're going to import the data, then, create the date table, because, revenue table and expense table in this concept is completely, there are 2 separate tables. So there are 2 separate tables. Or I think the essence of date table in this concept is practically just so for us to explore a bit of the transformation, or how to, leverage on date table, and I'll be using the mQuery concept, right? Of course, it doesn't matter whichever method you want to use, but there's this date mQuery concept for creating our date table. So cleanups, we do a bit of more cleanups and transformation. We do, and then we try to study the, reporting, structure in terms of our data and get it, structure our data to be ready for the reporting. Then of course, model our tables, integrate the tables together, because you have your revenue table inside a separate Excel sheet or a separate table, and then your expense table inside a separate table. So there's a need for us to, and refine each table to fit the other, so that we can join the two of them together as a single table, because we need a pretty much a single table, like a kind of financial or income statement data table, right, which is going to harmonize data from your revenue table and your expense table and match the two of them together to become one single table that we're going to use for the analysis. Then of course some other DAX calculations to get our things up and running, and then also creating some subtotals. Yeah, so if you can see, there are a couple of subtotals there. The total revenue is a subtotal. Cost of goods sold is also a kind of subtotal. Total expenses, I mean, your revenue minus your expense gives you your net income, but within it you have so you can have multiple sources of revenue. Then you need to first get the actual total revenue, and you have the cost of goods sold, and then you have other expenses. So you need to get the total of your other expenses, and then you get your net income. But one of the things that is missing here is that in financial statement or income statement, beyond just getting your, there's something like, your gross profit margin, which is like a kind of your percentage in terms, your gross profit represented in percentage. That's what you mean by the margin. Same with net income, and we also reach our net profit, and then we're also going to get the net profit margin, which is also, percentage. So that being said, so we're going to also look at, so those are the sum total that we're going to, try and achieve. And then we are going to now embed our, template. So there's a template. So the idea is that every organization has a template for their income statement. So we are going to see a demo template, which might be similar to what your organization uses. Then of course, but even if it doesn't, you'll probably see where the changes are or the differences are. You can easily tweak it. And then, so we're going to embed the template, and then, overlay our calculations on the template, and then do a bit of time comparison. So, do a kind of year-on-year comparison. And I think that will be, but like I said, pay attention to, the structure we have here. This might not be a perfect structure, but we look at, what the template actually has for us, right? So I think from here, we can then, switch to Power BI and get, serious, right? So, so the first thing I want us to do is to look at our data. So this data will be shared with you. It was intentional not to have shared it in the first place, because a lot of us may want to start practicing during this session, but I'll just advise you to pay a lot of attention. You can pick the video later and then practice, right? So we'll just, look through these data here. We have our sales table. This is our table. This is Excel sheet. These are tables. So we have sales order, which is like, this is a manufacturing company, and they receive orders, and then the date the order comes in. These are the order numbers. The customer index, in terms of the ID of the customer, that is making the order, that raised the order, so that we can, use this to link up the lookup table, which is the customer lookup table. The channel, the channel, we have the currency code, we have the warehouse code, we have the delivery region index, which is also a kind of index that we can use to look up the region table. And we have the description, product description index, product description index, which is also, to look up the product table in order to identify the product. And then the other quantity, the unit price, the line total, the total unit cost, right? So this is pretty much another table, so which I think we are all, familiar with or we can relate with. And then we have the lookup tables here, which is the customer table, the region table, the product table, right? And I mean, these are pretty much your normal lookup table, which most of us will, call the dimension table, right? And then we have the company expenses, right? So remember, we said income statement is one of like the simplest aspect of the financial statement. So financial reports, and which is just all about taking your revenue, which is in your sales, against your company expenses to get your some certain information like net profit, gross profit, net profit margin, gross profit margin, and the likes. So now you notice that this so this is the company expenses. You realize that the customer order is in a format where you have the date, the order, and then the amount. So unlike the expenses where you have it in a kind of pivot, right? So you often get to see this in finance, right? Where they do their reporting like this. So so you probably get this. So you can see the expense items, you can see the expense categories. So this is the COGS. Majority of us know what COGS, like cost of goods sold. And then we have other expenses, insurance, marketing, payroll, and the likes. So now we have that, and then the last file we have is the income statement template. So this is just this is a template, right? So you can see here, this is the template I want to work with. So you can see here, this is our revenue broken down into the channels, right? And then you have the total revenue. And then we have the COGS, right? You have the COGS, which is subtotal of all of our COGS, which is cost of sales or cost of goods sold. And then we have the gross profit, which is the difference between revenue and COGS, right? And then of course gross profit percentage in this, which is like what percentage of revenue is gross profit. So it gives you this value, right? That's what it means. What percentage of revenue is our gross profit? So that's what they are asking for here. And then you have other expenses, right? Other expenses, a lot of other expenses here. These are what you call indirect expenses, while these ones are direct expenses, right? This one impacts sales, while these ones are just some other expenses within the business. Please, I'm going to put out that disclaimer again in case there are finance people here, accountants. Please, I'm not an accountant, so you can always correct me if I'm getting anything wrong, please. Just working based on the template that I've worked with before. So then you have the total expense, which is total of all of these items. And then you have the net profit, right? So net profit is the the total expense minus the I think it's minus gross profit. And then the net profit is the percentage of these over revenue, right? So that's what you this is just a simple template of what we want to achieve, and then we need to represent it in Power BI. So what I want to do is to quickly show you is finished product, right? Like something I have played with and see how we can quickly build this out. So this is just a simple income statement in Power BI, right? Using that same data set. And then here you have it represented here. You can see, this is for the selected year based on my filter here. That's the value you have here. So what happened is that if I select 2017, the income statement will look up the previous year and give me the value, and then also give me the what? The comparison with the comparison of these two, as well as the percentage change, right? So you can see it here, and then I can, make it a bit more, a lot more flexible, right? But it's just, so this is just a funny point. This is what we want to quickly try and see how we can quickly, achieve, right? So, all right. So that being said, I'm just going to go back to our table here. Let me just save this and call it. I'm just going to save this and call it scenario income statement, right? So the first thing we want to do is to bring in our data. Now that we understand our data, we've seen the supporting tables, we've seen the lookup tables, we've seen the fact tables or the transaction tables, right? And then we need to bring them in and see what we can do, how much of transformation we can do before we start our, report design. So because it's an Excel sheet, so I'll just go to Excel workbook here. And then I have my income statement data set. So I'm just going to import it. Excuse me. So I think it seems like we have some data, some hidden data as well. But let's just see. So we have, the customer data. I want to bring in the customer data. I want to bring in the financial statement, which is our income statement, right, which is a template, right, that we want to work with. And then, so we have the product data, we have the region, right, we have the sales data, right, and then we have the company expense, right? So, so I'm just going to go to transform. I'm just going to go to transform, and then let's see. Yeah, so here we have it. So we have our data here. We have the customer data, the financial template, which is our income statement template. We have the product data, we have the region table, we have the sales data, we have the company expense. So remember, the goal is to just put these, and which is expense and sales, together into a single table, and then fit it into write some task calculation that can help us fit it into this template, right? Or make it come up in this, in this template. So, so now that we've brought in our table, one of the things I want us to do here quickly is to create our date table. So how do you do that? I'm going to quickly use the, I have a a dashboard here I can quickly use to create my table without wasting time. So I'll just go to new source here, and then I go to blank query, and then I go to advanced editor, and then I place the code there and I click done. So next thing I have to do is to invoke a date. So I'll just quickly put some date here. So 2014, 2021, right? So of course, organizations have what you call financial year. So financial year, it could be any month, right? So a lot of organizations have what they call, they are like, it could be that for a certain organization, their year starts from February, or their year starts from March, or it starts from November, or it starts from August, right? So I think there's that concept, right? So I'm just going to put just any number here, 7, and then I invoke. So once I invoke, my table is created, my date table is created. You can see here. So this is just a fast and a quick way to create a table. Of course, what I have done here is not dynamic, but I can decide to make it dynamic by, maybe writing another, creating maybe 2 variables here, say start date, and then link it up here, right? Link it up here, or in my form here, and then so you can make it dynamic. So I mean, I can write a variable and let it look through all of my data set and then pick the earliest date it can find and make it, pass it into start date, and then link it up here, and then also do the end date as well and link it up here. So it gives me that dynamic this thing. So it looks into all of this data set and pick the earliest date it can find. So it's similar to how the calendar auto works, right? So that's so I can make it dynamic, but let's just leave that for now. So what I'm just going to do is to rename this, right? So this is a table. This is a date table that has been created. I'm just going to rename it and call it date, right? And then also the query that generated the date, which is this, I'm also going to rename it and just call it date query, right? Date query. Right. So so that being done, I think we can do some kind of house cleaning here, right? Can do some bit of house cleaning. So I want to do something. I want to just rename this and call it customers instead of customer data. I also want to rename this and call it, instead of financial statement, I want to call it income statement template. I'm getting rid of the underscore. Income statement template, and then the product. Then I can change this to just product. Region as well, I can do the same thing and call it regions. And then sales, I can rename this and call it just sales, set of sales data, right? And then I have my company expense, which is fine. And what else can we do here? So we can go ahead and do some other kind of transformation. So let's see what more we can do here. I need to rename this properly. Income statement template. Right. So or before I do that, let me quickly do something. So I can group my tables there and say, okay, I want to group my queries and call it queries, right? So in case I create another query, so I right click here on the query and I go to move to group. I create a new group and call it queries. Right. I click OK. So I also want to separate the the data, right? The data that tables that I'm going to use in my model from template, or just want to group. I mean, it's just a way of arranging your your tables, right? So I can say I want to move every other thing that is not template. So in a case whereby you're working on multiple reports, say you're doing balance sheet and everything, and then you have all of your table in the same model here. So you just need to arrange your model very well, your tables very well. So I can say I right click here and I say move to group and I click on new group. I can call it data model. I click OK, and then you can see so I can move this into here, product, region, sales, company expense. I mean, you can actually I can even move my date there. So I know that, so my my template is going to be here, my queries are going to be here, and then the tables in my data mode that I'll be using are going to be here, right? So So this is just to, just a simple, a simple exercise. So what more can we do? If we go to the date table, so one of the things you probably need to pay a lot of attention to is the data type of the data type of your tables. So because it can actually give you it can be a bit of a nightmare if you don't get some of your data type right. Yeah, so data types, I can see, let me see, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename some of the columns that I'm going to be using. So say month in calendar, I can rename these and call these month and year, because this is simply month and year, right? I can rename this and call it month and year. Of course, this is also quarter, so I can call this quarter and year. Quarter and year, right? So let me just quickly show you something, right? Which I did. I want to generate quarter, right? Of course, you can see there's no quarter. What you have is quarter and year. So I want to generate quarter from this table. So I'm going to use this method. Probably, maybe it could be a new method to you. So you can see I go to add column here, and I'm going to use this called column from examples. So if I click on this column from examples, so it tries to create a new column for me. So there's a quick way for me that I can use to create this quarter. If I do Q and I do 1, and I press enter, you see what it did? It looked at this field, it extract the Q1 from it. And if I click OK, it's going to extract Q. So you can see if I filter here, it has all of the Qs that we have, Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Right, so this is just a quick way of deriving a column. So I can rename it and I can call it what? Quarter. I can call it quarter. So that being done, I can just ensure that all of the data types are correct. Ensure that all of the data types are correct, which is very important. So I need to look at some other things I can do here. Other tables that I can do some cleaning up. So we have the order ID, the data type, order dates, customer name index. We have channel, we have warehouse code. So what I'm going to do is this. So unit line total is a calculation of your unit price and other quantity, right? Of course, you also have the total unit cost here. Well, we're pretty much interested in this line total. So what I'm going to do is to change this to revenue, right? Because that's the word that I think we are all used to, right? Revenue. So I'm going to just change this to revenue and just leave that like that. So yeah, so I think that is that. So I'm also going to change, I want to quickly change this to order date, one word. I mean 2 words instead of 1 word. And I think we're pretty much fine. Yeah. So now let's look at other tables. So we have the company expense table here. So there's something wrong with this table, right? So you can see that our first record is meant to be our header. So you can easily just promote this as header, right? I know this should be pretty straightforward. You can just, you see, if I right click here, I think I can do promote first header as role. I can use a second. I can just use, here, right? Use first row as header, right? So this is the first row, but I want to use it as header. So I can just click here and then it moves up my first row as header, right? So Yeah, so that's pretty much what we need to do. Every other thing seems a bit all right. A bit all right. Yeah. So that's that. So before we move on, so let's look at this. So you can see, like I mentioned earlier, our sales table, simply looks like this, right? For each transactions you get, for each day, you get to see transaction. I mean, each transaction is tied to a day. And remember, the goal is to be able to what? Combine these sales table with your expense table in order for us to have a standard income statement data table, right, at the end of the day. So it means that the structure of this table has to also conform with the structure of this table, right? So what it then means is that because we have our data in this manner in our income statement, in our company expense, we need to pivot this, right? We need to pivot this so that we can have, for each expense item, we can have the date as well as the value, right? For each expense item, we can have a date. For this, we can have the date beside it as well as the value beside it, right? So the way to achieve that is to unpivot this table, because this table is already a pivot, right? So how do we unpivot? You can do, there are different ways you can do. You can actually highlight all of these tables from here till the end, and then right click, you see you see how to, unpivot. However, I can also select these two because I want to pivot every other thing apart from these two, right? So I can select these two, right click, and say what? Unpivot other columns. So other columns except for these two is what is going to unpivot, right? So I'm just going to quickly do that. Unpivot other columns, and then there you have it. So you now have what? For each line item, expense line item, you have the attribute, which is the date. So I can change this to what? I can change this to month, right? And then you have the value. So I can call this what? Expense value, right? And then I can change this to decimal, right? And then here I can change this to date, right? So I'm just gonna quickly save this. Okay. Apply later. So now that we have this, the next thing we want to do is so let's just be sure that we are all good here. All right, yeah. So we have to date. So we now have, a similar structure of our company expense as well as our sales table, right? So even though we are not yet there, but we are, we are one step or one leg in. So the next thing we want to do is to what? You want to develop our, model. So let's just commit our data now. I'm just going to click on close and apply. And then we have it, our data. So we are loading our data into our, our canvas, right? So from Power Query into our canvas. So we have a bit more clean data. We can come here and just, inspect our data and see what it looks like, right? So here you have it. So one thing I always like to do is to ensure that, the dates are in the short form. So I'm just going to quickly change this to short form, right? And then probably change this also to decimal, right? So so we have our company expenses table, and then we also have our customer table, date table. I'm also going to just quickly change this as well to short date. Then we also have our income statement. So this is what our income statement template looks like that we're going to be using. and then we have our product table. Of course, we have our region, and then we have our sales table. So we also have the date here. So I'm just going to quickly change the date here to the short format, right? So now the next thing we want to do is to go to our data model, right? We've been able to inspect our data, and then we seems to be on the right track. And then we inspect our model. So our model is so by default, you're likely going to just, you're definitely going to see some automatic relationship created for you in Power BI. But one advice I'm going to give you is that do not rely on some of this relationship, right? Sometimes they might be correct, but I can tell you most of the time they are not correct. So it's always advisable that you delete the relationship, you delete them, and then you can recreate them yourself, right? So I'm going to delete this relationship that has been created. So one of the things that you can do is you can see a circle down below here, like a rounded arrow. So you can click on it to reset. So once you click on it to reset, you have you're able to see all of your tables together as one, in a single view. So all I'm just going to do is let me zoom in a little bit so that we can see. So what I'm going to do here is to arrange my tables, right? Just to clean up a bit of further cleanup. So what I'm going to do is to move my arrange all of my lookup tables at the top. So my lookup tables have the date, I have the customer, I have the product, right? I have the region. And then I have my tables, sales table, which is more like fact tables, the income expense table. And then I can, put my template below here. Let me move this up a bit. And then I move my template down below here, right? Then I can maybe have, arrange some other tables. But I mean, this is just to, arrange your tables in a proper way. So what I want to do next is to establish some relationship. So between my sales table and my date table, of course, I have my order date here, which I can easily drag into the date table to establish a relationship between the two. So you would always expect a one-to-many relationship in your when you're creating relationship between your lookup tables and your transaction tables, right? So, and for the customer as well, I can establish another relationship, which is customer index and customer name index here. And then for product also, I can establish my index. I can move my index to product description index here to establish a relationship. And then for region, can also move the index to what? To the delivery region index here to establish that relationship, right? So now, let's continue to look at what we want to do. So after establishing this relationship, the next thing you want to do, remember, so there's a reason why I'm not doing this, right? Because at the end of the day, we are not, or we may not, we will not use this table, right? We're probably going to derive some table, like I told you. We're going to move data from this table and merge it to this table to create a single income statement table, which comprises of sales revenue information and expense information, right? So that's what we are going to do later. But for now, I think we are pretty much okay here. So now the next step is to see how we integrate these two tables together, this sales table and the company expense table, in order for us to get our single large table, right? So I'm going to go back here, right? And then I'm going to quickly do something here. So I'm going to create a new table here. I come to table tools, new table. That's, if you are browsing from or if you are, looking at it from your data view, it's going to be your table tools and then new table. So it's just a way of arranging our stuff. So I'm going to create a table called key measures. Please feel free to ask any question if you have. So I'm going to create, a new table called key measures, and I click enter. So I want to just keep some, measures here, right? And I'm going to create a measure within this table, right? I'm going to create a measure and right click and call it a new measure. And then I can say total sales equals sum of revenue from my sales table, right? Yeah, sum of revenue from my sales table. And yeah, so that's also sum of revenue from my sales table. Of course, I can come here. Let me see if I can just quickly run a test of this. Yeah, so you have this number. Of course, this number is not useful to us, but this is just to for us to see, what our, I mean, it's not useful to us, right? I mean, it's not relevant to our analysis, but this is just but it's going to be, we're going to use it in some other, calculation that we're going to do later on. But one of the things I can do here is that I can just, right click on this column here and then click on a height. So you can move my measure table above, right? So you can see just a proper way of arranging some of your work or your measures, right? Or your data and your tables. So I have my key measures. I'm going to store some key measures here. I'm also going to create some other tables to, store some other measures. So, yeah. So remember, the goal is to combine combine data from our expense table and our sales table. So we need to try and stay on track on that. So what we need to do first, if you go to our table here, this is our expense table, right? So we have our expense items, the expense category, the month, and then of course, the column name is month, but what you have in there is the date. So we have the expense value here, which is, which is the value, right? That's for each of these line items, right? Cost item, expense items. Now, we want to, what we want to do is to what? If you go to the sales table, you realize that, this is what our sales table look like. So we can't really combine at the moment, right? So we need to do something. So we need to be able to, because the expense item is broken into, the expense table is, it's broken into expense items. So meaning that there's a categorical column, or can I say a measure, there's a dimension. These are dimensions that you use to measure all these, these values, right? So we need to be able to establish similar dimension as well in our sales table, so we can, derive the amount, right? So now, so what we need to do is to say, so what we want to do is we want to create a new table out of this table, right? That will look something similar to our expense table. So we want to create a new table from the sales table that will be similar to what we have in our expense table. So, but if you look at the sales table, the only thing that looks a bit, like a dimension here that we can use to also split our table is revenue. Of course, given the fact that if you look at our income statement template, you see that the revenue is practically broken down into channels, right? So maybe in your case or in your instance, you might not be. Hold on a minute. I think. Okay, so I'm just going to sort this in ascending order. All right, yeah. So in your case, or maybe if you're trying to work on another organizations or maybe your own company's, income statement, your case might not be this case here, right? Your case might be, I mean, if you look at the slide I showed you the other time, the sample, they have normal income and they have other income, right? So, or normal revenue and other revenue. So they broke it into just normal revenue and other revenue, and then they were able to get the total revenue. They're able to also do the total revenue. So, but in the case of the table that we are working with, or the company we are working with here, what simply looks like a kind of dimension here is this, and then we can generate a new table from here, a new revenue table from here, that would look like what we have in our expense, company expense. So what I'm going to do is to just collapse all of these just to keep stay in touch. So I'm going to go to table tools again. I'm going to create a new table, and I'm going to call it what? Channel revenue. Channel revenues, and then equal. So I'm going to summarize data from that table, right? So you can see summarize. If you have a question, please feel free. So, okay, I mentioned a lookup. Lookup table is just like your dimension table. If you know what dimension tables are. So they're just tables that you use to, break down your values, your measures. So or to group your measures. So that's what it simply means. So I'm going to summarize, right? So the summarize is asking for what? It's asking for the first. This thing is a table, so we're going to specify the table. We are, trying to summarize from the sales table. Yeah, I'm going. I have a question. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm trying to summarize from the sales table, right? And then so we're grouping by what? We want to group by. Remember, channels, right? We want to group by channels, and then we also want to group by. Remember, the other item is month. We also have month, so we want to group by. In the case of this, we have the month here from date, right? Because remember, there's a relationship between your date table and your sales table, right? So trying to group by, month here. So because in the expense table, what you actually have in the expense table is your comment. Let me take this. So what you have in your expense table here is actually month. So it's just a date that is representing first day of every month. So you realize that everything has first day of the month, and then the month number is what you have in front of it. So so if we go back here, what we're trying to do, new table, channel revenue, and then we have the word sales table. From the sales table, group it by the channel, right? Then also group it by the month and year from the date table. Remember, we link up date and sales table together, right? So then we want to also set category. Remember category, right? We want to set category to revenue. We call it revenue. So this is just setting a category and calling it revenue, right? Creating another column and then giving it a default value across. So then also let's say the first date, right? And then you are going to pick the minimum of the date. So remember the first day of the month, which is the minimum of the date for each and every one of these categories. So the first day of the month, we're going to pick date here. date here, and then we are going to pick the sales value, right? Sales value. Sales value, and then sales value. Remember the total sales measure that we created, right? From, we created it from our sales table. So we're going to, do this, and then I'm going to press enter. So we have been able to derive this table from this table, right? So, so just to explain again what we've done, we have this expense table, and then we need to create a replica of it from the sales table, right? And then we decided that, okay, we're going to use channel to, group them, right? So, so we use channel to group them, and then so we use channel to group, and then we have the category in the case of expense, which is, expense category, which is this. And then we also are able to establish a category called, core revenue. So everything you find there will be revenue. So for each sales channel, we have the category will be revenue for each sales channel, the first day of the month, and then the value, right? So meaning that in January 2015, the whole sales channel makes this amount, right? So I think we are pretty much close, right? So we've been able to establish a table that would look similar to what we have in our expense table, so that we can be able to, link the two together, or union the two together, or match them together, right? Depending on which one you understand, or which of the words. So one of the things I'm going to quickly do here is to change these dates from date time to normal date, and then also change this to short date. So one of the things I'll also do here is to change this to append the dollar sign here, or just change the data type to currency, so that I can append the the dollar sign in it. So I'm just going to do this, just say currency. So it's going to change this to this, and then we have what we have our value here. So there's something I did, because I actually want to establish a 2-digit. Let me see if this is going to work. Okay, I think so. It doesn't matter. One, let's see if one works. Yes. All right. So now we are pretty much close to what we want to achieve. Remember, we're trying to create a single big table, right, called income statement data table. And what we need to do is to merge or append the data we have here into the data we have in the expense table, right? And that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to go to table again here and click on new table. So I'm going to call this the income statement data, right? And I'll say it's equal to union, union. So the first table is the company expenses table, right? Comma. So it's asking me for the second table. So in terms of the second table, I'm going to summarize again from the second table, which is the channel revenue, right? Remember, so the channel revenue. So I'm going to specify the table name, which is channel revenue, and then I'm going to specify the so the first thing we are looking at from here is going to be the category. Is it the category? No, I think it's the channel, right? If I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be the channel. And then the second item will be the category. So if the information does not align, we're going to see that, right? If it doesn't align together with the expense table, we're going to see that. And then, so I know we have the line item, expense item first. That's how we have the channel first. And then secondly, we have the category, which is also the expense category in the expense table. So we have the category here. One of the other thing we have is the date. I think is the first date. And then we also have the the sales value, which is the sales value here, right? So let's see if we are able to create a table. Yeah, so if you look at this, let's just see, let's try and scroll down if I'm going to find. You can see the expenses are going to come up at the top, and then the revenue are going to come also. Should have matched the revenue. Yes, you can see the revenue here, right? So it starts from here and here and here. So so quickly I'm going to just do some housekeeping here, or can I say just clean up some things here. Excuse me. So I'm going to change the month format also here again and change it to date, and then change this to short date. Right. So I'm going to just quickly click on these and change it to, append the $sign and then change it to 2 decimal, right? Yeah, so we have that. So what I'm going to do now that we have this table, right, we need to now link this table to our date table so that we can be able to filter, right? So I'll go to relationship. This is my income statement data table that I've just created now. I'm going to move this to the side, and then I go to my date table and link it up to month here. Right, so we have the relationship established. So I can do something, right? Move this here and then move this here so that I can have it pretty much, a much more neater relationship that is, clarity on the relationship that we have established, and just to clean up, avoid some of the spaghettis that are there. All right, so yeah, so I'm going to quickly save. I really do not trust my computers. Yeah, so back to our data. So we can see that we have been able to, we are very close right now. So the next thing we want to do now is to, I think we just need to, okay, so I want to do something here. I want to quickly do something because it's going to be useful in the, it's going to be useful later. So I want to quickly do something. I want to create, just to prepare your mind. I'm coming with my key measures. So I want to create a new measure here and call it sales lasted. Just some, kind of time comparison, right? So in fact, I'm not even going to create it here. Because as part of ways to arrange your code, right? I'm going to create a new table. To arrange your measures, I'm going to create a new table and call it time comparison. So it's just a new technique, not like a technique, just a new way of doing things that I discovered, right? So sometimes it's just good to move all of your time comparison features or measures into a separate table, right? So I can have my total revenue or total sales in my key measures, and then I can have my anything that has to do with the previous year calculation in my time comparison table, right? So I'm creating this table called time comparison. I created relationship without going to modeling. I went to modeling. That's where I went to. I came here. This is model. And then I saw my table and I dragged the date from my date table into my month. Maybe you'll miss that. Can I assume that you missed that? Anyway, okay, good. So I just want to quickly create my a measure here and call it new measure and call it sales last year, say equals calculate, right? Of course, we want to calculate your last year sales. So equals calculate, and then you have what you specify the total sales that you have created already, which is this measure, and then you want to use your date add, right? You want to use a date add and say specify date, which is this, and then you want to go back by 1 year, right? And then you specify the interval, which is year. Okay, so that's your sales last year. Sorry, excuse me. Now, so I can also come here and then just look at my measures. This is my channel revenue. I'm going to bring it here because I'm not needing it. I'm not needing it, and I'm not using it. Even company expenses also, I can move it down here because I've been able to derive this table from this too. And then also I can put my time comparison here. A key measure also, I can put it here, right? So yeah, I'm actually trying to be, can I say thorough with my arrangement, right? So yeah, so that being done, excuse me. So that being done, one thing we want to do is this: we want to be able to, in our income statement data. So one thing we want to do is this: if you look at the template we have here, right, the template actually has revenue above, right? So it has revenue above, and then it has expenses, down below, right? So there's a need to. Okay, so I mentioned, maybe you didn't hear me when I said it. So I mentioned that you can keep your sales last year, can create sales here, then create sales last year and keep it here. But the thing is that at some point, depending on how many measure you have to create, right? If your project doesn't require so much measure, you can keep everything within the same key measure. But what I like to do is just now, which is something I've adopted recently. What I like to do is to I want to hide this so it can move my time comparison up here. All right. So what I do is to, of course, if you go to data model, you see it's hidden. So what I just want to do is to put all of my prior year calculation into time comparison table, right? But like I said, depends on how you work, or depending on how many, this thing. It's it's not a technical implementation. It's just my own way of arranging things now. You understand? So I can easily know where to go when I need something, right? I hope that's clear, Darlington. Yeah, so I have another question. Somebody said, sorry, our sales table serve as fact table, right, in modeling environment? Yes, but if you see, yeah, it serves as, fact table. Yeah, we just needed to, if you look at it, the only reason why we had to model it, I don't want to confuse you, right? We needed to model this to, date because we wanted to do some calculations, right? We needed to do some calculations to the sales table. So that requires some dates, using some of the, dates, using some columns or some values within this date table. So that's why we model it. So you can see that we also model our income statement and link it up to the date table as well. So your sales is your fact table. This is also your fact table, right? At the end of the day, this is the main table that will be so much relevant to our analysis, but this was just a means to an end. right? And this is the end, but this is not yet the full end. We still have to do some, little things here, right? So I need to quickly take this question, last one question. You first summarize the first table to look like table you want to append with. When you are doing union, why did you summarize again? Okay, so when I'm doing union, you'll notice that where's the table income statement? So apparently this table is still, if you look at the channel revenue table, it's still, a lot more, it's still a lot more, I mean, in terms of so if I didn't have this month and year here, I probably would have just, union the two of them together, right? But because I have this here, so I just have to just pick this from it. So it's not like summarize, like I'm picking. So, and the best way to do is like just, to do it in Power BI or in DAX is to, use summarize table again. So if I had just these 4 categories, I may not need to summarize. I'll probably just put the table name as the second item instead of having to summarize, right? You can see here. So everything is still coming from this same table, but because I needed to pick just these 4 fields, I had to use this summarize, right? So it's just what it's going to do is to group by just this 4. In a case where the other column, breaks down the transaction. All right. So, so that being said, I was explaining how we need to ensure that revenue comes before expenses, right? So, so what we're going to do is just quickly create a new column here. I'm going to create a new column here. I'll call it type, right? I call it type, and I say equal. I'm going to just quickly run a quick if statement. So I'll say if this category is revenue, remember revenue is the only category we have for revenue here is revenue. While for expenses, we have multiple categories, right? We have the COGS, we have the other expenses, we have the payroll, we have marketing and the rest. So what I want to do here is to say what if category income statement okay, it's called expense category. So let me just quickly do something before I do the calculations. I'm just going to quickly rename this to category instead of expense category. I mean, remember, we've been able to match both expense and revenue together. So they will always inherit the header of the first table that you pass into the union. So then this one, so I'm going to change this to values instead of expense values, right? So for this type, what I want to do is to say if category here, if category equals revenue, then please let's mute our mic, please. Please. All right, thank you. So I'm going to pass revenue here, right? Otherwise, it should return what? Expenses. Of course, this is our normal if statement, right? So so I press enter, so I'm able to, so you now have what expenses and revenue, right? So I would quickly create another column called type index, and then I sort, just like we always do our month, create another comment. Let me just copy from here. So this is like having month name and month number, and then you want to sort month number by month name by month number. So if this equals revenue, then return 1, and then otherwise return 2. otherwise done too. So, okay. Type index. All right. So this is whole number. This is text. So I'm just going to quickly do something. I'm going to sort this column by this column, right? So that because one is revenue, so one can be at the top. So I'll say sort type by type index. That's what I've just done. So I can then, let me just do this so we can see. So you have our revenue at the top and then expenses down, down below, right? So I need to do something, right? I need to I need to derive some values, right? Income values. So give me a second. Let me just quickly create this here. Let me create this here, right? Usually I probably would have created another. So if I'm working, because if I'm working on multiple, if I want to work on multiple reports, say balance sheet, trial balance, cash flow statement and the likes, you're going to have to write a lot of DAX queries, right? So that's where this arranging of your DAX, of your measures, that's where it becomes very handful. You really value it, but you even understand by the time, you get it, because it will require you to write a lot of DAX, a lot of measures. And so ideally, if I were to be creating all of those reports, right, what I will usually do is to create another table for my income analysis, another table for my balance sheet analysis, another table for my cash flow analysis, another table for my, you understand? So of course, this DAX or measures that relate to income analysis can actually sit into any of these tables, right? However, I can also separate them if I'm working on multiple reports, right? So I'm just going to quickly create another. Like I said, this is not necessary, right? But I just want to show you how you approach it in a case where you're working on multiple reports. So you know that any calculation that has to do with income analysis sits in income analysis. Any calculation that has to do with balance sheet analysis sits in balance sheet analysis table, right? So it's just a way of work that I think it's important that you understand. I can quickly create a new measure here and call it, but like I said, please, you can always put your measures here if you are working on a very small project. So I'm just going to call this income values. And then I say equals income values equals, let's say some of the values we have in our income statement data, remember? So I can say sum of the values in our income statement data. Yeah. Yeah. So if I come here now, let me just take this away. This is my income value and I bring it here. So you can see we have the income values there. But one thing is that within this table here, which is the income statement data, this value here, this true, which is the sum of this, which is this, is actually meaningless, right? You know why? The reason why it's meaningless is because in our analysis, we expect or we want revenue to be positive and then expense to be negative, right? So that they can net each other, right? So we then need to look at how we can handle positives and negatives, you understand, and the like. So what we're going to do now is to see how we can handle positive values and negative value within the same table, right? So if I go to my income analysis table, which is my new table, income analysis table. Let me just hide this so that it can go up. Now, yeah, this is my income analysis table. So I'm going to create a new measure called actuals, right? Actuals. And then I put into brackets 000. So meaning that because I want to divide by, 1,000. I mean, when it comes to financial statements, you always have to report your numbers in a very, I think I don't know what they call it, right? So the idea is that when you see 2.9 and then on the head of the table you see comma 000, it simply means that you have divided every value that they are saying by 1,000, right? So when you see 2.290, you probably are talking about 290 million or something. So that's what that's a essence. So that's what so that's what the values, all of the values for all of the component of our template, that's what they will return. All of their values will be divided by 1,000, right? So now I want to create the actuals where we'll be able to handle negative and positive values, set the values that should return negative and they set the value that return positive. Remember, our revenue is positive and then our expenses are negative. So in terms of the actual, this measure I'm trying to create, which is actual. So I'm going to first thing first, I'm going to create a variable called revenue, right? And I'm creating another one called expense, right? So, and then I'm going to pass the right specific information that needs to go into them and what they should return. So in terms of the first variable called revenue, what I'm going to do is to get the income values, which is this income value, calculate income value. I always like to avoid using the table and use the measure straight directly. All right. So income values, right? And then pass what? This income values, pass it into this variable called revenue when the the type, when the type is I think it's type, yeah. So when the income statement data, so when the type equals revenue, right? Pass what? Pass pass the value into the variable called revenue when the income type is revenue, right? So next thing I'm going to do again is to create that of expense. So I call it what? I say calculate, which is the same thing. I can just copy this. Yeah, I think this is revenue or revenues, right? But we'll check that later. So this should be expense, right? Should be expenses. I'm coming. I need to check something. I'm going to go back to that. This table you have there. Sorry, cost statement data. Okay, it's revenue, not revenues. So I'm going to change this to revenue, right? Or I can as well change the revenue here to revenue. Anyone works, right? Just keep this as revenue, right? So now we've created these two variables. However, what I want to do here is to multiply this one by what? -1, right? So that I can return negative for expense. Then I'll then return what? I'll return if, remember, we're going to divide by 1,000, right? So, but first thing first is to return the value that is selected. So this is just a simple logical statement, right? If selected value equals revenue, then return revenue. So I'm just going to do this. If selected item is revenue, then what? Return the value here, which is revenue, right? Comment. In a second, type this out then. Oh, if selected value, which is of this is revenue. Why is this? Yeah. Coming. Okay. So if it's revenue, then what? Return the revenue value from above, right? Yeah, it's the revenue. Return the revenue value from above. Else, remember if, and then this is like a nested if again, right? If the why is it giving me error? Just please give me a second. If type, yeah, if type equals revenue. Then return revenue. So if okay, I'll just go ahead and continue because I'm not sure why it's giving me the error. Let's see. So then I'm going to do the same thing for expense, right? Then if it is not, then it should what? Return. It should return revenue plus expense. So because revenue from expense is going to net each other. So here, I'm going to do selected value again. If the selected value is this, which is expenses, then return. Is it revenue we saw then or revenues? Anyway, let's see. We can come back to it once you're able to figure out. So it returns expense, right? Now, if otherwise, it should what? It should return revenue plus expense. I'm going to explain why I've done this. So it should return revenue for expense. So if we go back to our template, so is either we have revenue or we have expense or every other thing is either deducting revenue from expense, right? Which is our final net income. I mean, just like our slide is simply revenue minus expense, then gives us our income, right? So this is what is, and your income is your revenue plus expense. And the moment this one is negative, it's going to take it away from the positive and then give you your income, right? So yeah, so I need to figure out why this is giving error. Selected value. Okay, this is supposed to have a closing bracket and then a closing bracket. Yeah. Yeah. So income statement. Just don't know why this is blank. Let me execute and see what we have. Okay, good. So, but remember, we want to also divide it by, this 1,000. So all you need to do is to put a divide here. Put a divide here, and then so your divide, which is your numerator, and then 1,000 should be your denominator, right? 1,000, right? And then when it is, infinity, it should return 0, just to handle infinity. So we've been able to establish our actuals, right? So I mean, we can actually test this, right? So this is let me see if we can quickly test this. We have the actuals. Just going to replace this with actuals and then see. So you have this, right? So this is practically the result of your income, minus expense. You can see the value is now different. So I mean, I can, just create a new distinct to see our normal income values. Now these are income values, and then this is after taking our revenue or expense away from your revenue, and then you have this. So we are pretty much close, right? So now what we want to quickly do is to roll up is to get the subtotals, right? Which is if you go back to the template, we have the subtotals, which is the total revenue, COGS, gross profit, total gross profit margin. So we need to just calculate the subtotal, right? Yeah, we need to calculate the subtotals. So, excuse me. So quickly, we'll just calculate the subtotal. I probably have the, formula somewhere. I may just copy and then I explain to you each of the formulas, right? But under our income analysis, so I can quickly right click here and generate what the first subtotal. So the first subtotal is revenue, right? So the first subtotal is revenue. So I'm just going to quickly create it here. Revenue equals revenues equals, just do it, calculate, of course, which is our income values, right, from our income analysis statement data. So which is the measure we created earlier, income values. And then when type equals revenue, right? When type equals revenue. So so that is our that's our revenue. That's our revenue measure. So this is here. Of course, I think we can just quickly do this and see what it looks like. So these are revenue, right? So let me just remove that. So you've been able to create our revenue. So the next thing is I want to create our COGS. I want to create our COGS. Our COGS is our cost of goods sold, which is equal to our calculate, of course, income value. Income value, and then where what type equals COGS, right? So I hope you understand what we have done. I'm going to go back to the table again so that you can see. So what we're doing is that we're creating subtotals, and then if you look at our table here, we are summarizing all the data that are COGS to be COGS, all the data that are revenue to be revenue. Right now, one of the things we need to also do again based on this statement is we've gotten our revenue, gotten our COGS, so we need to get our gross profit and gross profit margin, which is the next thing. So let's quickly do that. Income analysis, our gross profit. Remember, our gross profit is what? Our gross profit equals our what? Our revenue minus what? Minus COGS, right? So these are the measures that we have created already. So I just using them, reusing them to achieve this. And then our gross profit margin is pretty much what percentage of revenue is your gross profit. That's what you have. That's what you mean by your gross profit margin. So I create a new measure here. I call it gross profit margin. So I use divide, pretty much the best option. So what percentage of this is gross profit, right, to what? Revenue, right? And then return 0 in a case where it is trying to divide 0 by anything, which will give you infinity. So we've been able to figure out this, right? And then yeah, so we've been able to create our measures, and I mean the key measures that helps to that. Okay, yes, we still need to create some other ones based on the template. So we still have other expenses, net profit, as well as net profit and net profit percentage. Now, one of the things you realize is this: you figure out that how do we now, since we can use COGS to generate the subtotal, because there's a category called COGS in our data. That's why we're able to use COGS to get our total of our COGS, revenue, everything. And then we have other expenses, right? This is other expenses, but these are also other expenses, right? The marketing, insurance, and the likes. So how do we, how do we derive this? How do we derive it? Because it's very, very important. Before I forget, one thing I didn't do here is that your COGS is supposed to return negative. So I'm going to multiply this by what? -1. Remember, your COGS is meant to return negative. And then we need to quickly look at how we can achieve this, right? So I need you to get the concept here. So in order for me to be able to match all of this together with other expenses, it means that I need to what? What if I take away my total of all expenses here, right? Total of all expenses here. What if I take it away from my COGS? Remember, expenses here is a mix of your COGS and every other thing apart from revenue. Right? Expenses is everything except from revenue, so which also includes COGS. So if I get the sum total of all of my expenses and then I take away the sum total of COGS, it should be able to give me the total of other expenses, right? Do we agree? Do we agree? So,
Yes.
perfect. So if I come here now and I create a new measure, yeah, and I call it other expenses. So I can say it is what? So other expenses, I say calculate, right? So calculate income value. Remember, it's still the income value from our income statement data template that we want to return, right? Income values, and then return what? Return when the return income values, that's the sum total of income value, where the type equals expenses, right? Where the type equal expenses, and then minus it from what? From COGS, right? And that should be able to give us our income statement. Our other expenses, right? So of course, remember it is negative, so we need to multiply it by minus, so it has to also return as negative. So we've gotten our other expenses, so we can now get what? Our net profit. So let's just quickly calculate that. Our net profit should be your, so our net profit should be our what? Remember, it's our revenue minus COGS, right? Our net profit is our revenue minus COGS from the formula and other expenses, right? And other expenses, right? So that's our net, our net profit is, since this is negative, revenue is positive, this is negative, this is negative. So we're going to have to add everything together. So the negative is going to net itself off against the positive value, right? So yeah, sold. Okay, do I have a question? Okay, cost of goods sold. Okay, perfect. All right, so now we've gotten our net profit, and the last one is our net profit margin, right? So the margin, of course, still the same method we used to get the gross profit margin. So it should be net profit margin, right? So which is equal to the divide your what? Net profit by revenue, right? That the what percentage of revenue is our net profit. That's what we mean by net profit margin. the revenue being positive and the rest being negative, is it like a rule or is just calculation? So is a rule in finance, your net profit has to return as negative. Sorry, what's the question again? Your revenue being positive. Yes, your revenue has to be positive, and then your expenses has to be negative. So yeah, I think it's a rule, it's a finance rule. So now that we have all the distance we need, so what we need to do is that we can quickly even test out what we have done, right? Let's see if we can quickly test out what we have done. Just going to move this here, right? So I want to quickly do something and say I want to bring the template. So I need to, bring out a table and then bring the template, which is our template, right? So this is our template. I'm going to move in the row index. Or no, let me bring in the item, income statement item. This is the item here. So we have our item here, income statement item, right? And then I'm going to quickly change this. Let me save this, please. So I'm going to quickly change this to the style, right? I want to change the style to minimal. Yeah, so I have the style here to minimal. And then I'm going to drag in the row index. Remember our template, what our template looks like, right? Row index. Maybe second. I'm going to drag in the row index here. Okay, I'm going to move it up so that I can build the first item and then sort it by row index. Yeah, so here you have it. You can see that we're gradually trying to mimic our template mimic our template in Power BI. So please just note something. If you go to the Excel sheet, you realize that this is just simple, templates to design in Excel. The difference between this and this is that this is bold, and then this is bold, and this is indented, right? So there are indentation, right? And then you'll find the reason why we have to repeat this thing here later, very soon. So you're going to find out why we have to repeat the same thing here, because this has indentation and this doesn't have indentation. So there are times where you want to do some calculations, and then you need to, especially for the sub distance, so you need to check with when the value is this. So if you check when the value has space here, indentation there, so the value here is not the same thing with the value here, because this indentation are represented as spaces, right? So you have this, and then so let's try and see how we can enable this indentation for our total revenues, the subtotals, right? COGS, right? And then also there are even spaces after each subtotal. Let's see how he can achieve that. Like line breaks or something. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do something, hide this. Let me try and hide this. So you can see if I try to hide this, I even have some spaces that is showing here, right? So but I think before I do that, let me see. Let me drag it back. This is very this thing. So I'm going to come here and say row index, and I'll change this to don't summarize. Don't summarize. Just go back again. Yeah, I think we've been able to create this space. Yeah, you can see the line breaks here. So don't summarize will give you the line breaks. Right. So don't summarize. And one more thing I want to also do is with the row index, I want to say show item with no data. So Yeah, because sometimes it do not show item that doesn't have data. So show items with no data. So I think we are pretty much getting close to what we want to achieve. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to try and hide this, right? Of course, but we still have the space, so we need to be able to correct it. And also, we are still yet to achieve our indentation. So what we're going to quickly do is to go to here, which is the format your visual. And what we're going to do is to look for what you call column header, and try to hide what you now text wrap. Yeah, so text wrap. I mean, so I think it could be word wrap depending on which version you are using. So I hide, turn off my text wrap here. And I'm also going to do the same thing for values, both column and value. So you can see that the space that we have at the top has already gone. Now, I want to do the same thing for value because this is the column header. So that text wrap actually took away the space you have within the column header. Now, for the values, we're going to do the same thing for value as well. So it's going to, bring out the space. Where's the values? This is values. I'm going to turn off the text wrap. And then you can see the indentation has returned for here, right? So this is gradually we are getting to where we want to get to, right? So yeah, so that's the first step. So now before I can bring the value here, I need to do something. So you know that all of our measures here, they are different measures, right? And we can't be dragging different measures to this table because it's not going to work. Probably just, give us a different columns and then arrange them at the top here. So what we need to do is to have a single measure that will combine all the items we have, all these variables we have, including the values of all these items. So it's going to combine the values of the sub values which you have in these measures, and then also the value for what the line items themselves, right? So let's just create it. So that seems like one of the maybe the remaining 4 measures I'm going to create. But I think this is actually the major one. So I'm going to call it selected year actuals, right? Now I'll say equals I'll create. So I'm going to explain this, but let me just first type. So I'm going to click current item, right? I'm saying when an item is just to pass selected item into it, selected value, right? Selected value. So that means this whichever one of these item that is selected, right? So that's what I want to pass it. So if current item is going to be now in this case, I'm going to use the normalized version instead of the version that is not normalized. Let's go back to the income statement data. Sorry, the template. So this is the template data. You can see this is a template. So you can see this is the normalized version of this value, right? And this is the version that is not normalized. So I'm going to you're going to have the recorded session. So I think we are practically wrapping up in the next 10 minutes. We should be done. So I just want to create this right, because this is the main thing. The rest is just having to do, last year, previous year, and the like. So this is just the main thing that is left. So I'm going to say selected. When selected value, yeah, you're going to get the recording. Yeah. So selected item, I'm going to call it income statement normalized. Yeah, this is this normalized, right? So I'm passing what has been selected into it. And then I say for this each selected item return, of course, we want to do some nested if here, right? Nested if. So I'll be using the switch through statement. right? So what I want to do here is I want to say if current item equals, no, it's one word. So if current item, which is the selected item here, if it is equal, that is, if it gets to here, right? So let's just call it, create a new thing and call it total revenue. I mean, sorry, reference total revenue, right, from our template. So in the template, you find total revenue. So we are checking that if the value selected, or if I get to total revenue, right? If I get to total revenue, then return what? Return this, right? I mean, just say, it's like just saying return revenue, right? But I'm going to divide it. Remember, we didn't divide our revenue by this. We didn't divide our revenue by 1,000. So we're going to just divide it here. So we can just divide it here, comma, 1,000, then 0, right? All right. So let's say I come here. I just put what? Put blank. Let me just put let me just put blank if it will work. Yeah, blank, and then this. All right, so let's just quickly look at it. So if I move this selected value now and I move it to here, I move it here, so you can see here we have this. There's something I want to quickly do. Let me just take this away. Slicer. Where's the date? Yeah. So you can see here, so I have my year. I'm just going to quickly, filter this and let it only show 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, right? So if I select 2017, you see the value has changed. If I switch to 2018, the value has changed. If I don't select anything, it shows me everything, right? So now we've created that. So we'll go back to our selected measure again. So we've gotten revenue. Let's say we want to do COGS. So all I need to do is to what? Is to copy this, right? Is to copy this. Is to copy this. And then call this when it is what? COGS, right? From our template, remember, and then return what? Return COGS. So if I execute this, you see we have what? Our COGS here. If I click enter, second. Okay, I think I see the problem. So if this is, I think it's called total COGS, not COGS, total COGS. So if you return COGS, comment should show me total COGS. Anyway, just a minute. When current item equals total COGS, it should return this. So let me just try and complete it, and then we can come back to see. So I have a total gross profit, and then return gross profit. Then total gross profit margin, return gross profit margin. So I'm just going to try and copy the formula so we don't waste our time, since we already have an idea of what we're trying to achieve here, right? So I'll just quickly copy the formula and paste so that we can see what happened. But of course, I'm going to explain as well. So let me just move it from here. Now So you can see here we have when the current item selected is total revenue, you should return the value we have in our revenue measure. You should return the value in our COGS. If it is total COGS, total gross profit, you should return the value we have in our gross profit. If it's gross profit percentage, you should return the gross profit percentage. But you notice something, we formatted it to return what percentage, right? Then also instead of dividing by 1,000, we formatted it to the percentage. So total other expense, you return the value we pass into what the other expenses, and then total net profit, you return is value here, right? The net profit percentage as well, just divided by what? Convert it to percentage, right? And then what we have now done is that these are all of the subtotals. Then for the remaining items here, we now have what we have. So we now try to return the actual of what these other items, the other items, line items. So trying to return the actual, right? So anytime what the selected item, you can see we are looking up the items in this case now, not the distance. We are looking up the items, in the income statement, not the normalized, right? We're looking at the normal item, not the normalized item. So because of how the table is arranged, then we can now an additional return. So anytime this, like your if statement, if this, then return this, if this, return this, if this, return this, if this, otherwise then return the values for each of the line items that we have here, right? So if I execute this, I think they should give us the value that we want. So you I actually wanted to see it build up one after the other, but I don't want to waste. Okay, so apparently there's something wrong with COGS. So we just have to trace back and see COGS. So if I pass COGS, if I do this and I put COGS there, it's showing blank. If I change it to net profit, I have a, so something is wrong with the COGS. So we need to look, well, so type, is it COGS? Income statement data type COGS. So you just need to check why it's not returning anything for COGS. Coming, where is my COGS? So this formula seems correct. What give birth to COGS, this income value is also correct. Then income statement data type. So you see that there's no COGS there, so we need to check income statement data type. Oh, no. So this is not correct. This is not correct. So we need to fix COGS. So it shouldn't be type, it should be category. Yeah, it should be category. So I think this should solve the problem. Yeah, so we now have our COGS here, right? So of course we can quickly, just change this to the type that we want. Sorry, this is dollar, right? Dollar, and then maybe we make it 2 decimal places. And then there you go. Right? So you can see the negative here are in bracket, and then the positives are in. Okay, so I need to, I think I mistakenly sort by this. So I need to bring this back. I need to bring this back and sort by this, right? And then close it up. Oh, sorry. So, some other things I wanted to show you is to see how you can calculate, but it seems that I don't know if we can still, go beyond there, but of course, within our, within here, within the the time comparison. Of course, time did not allow us. We can create the previous year values, right? The previous year measures, and then you create the previous selected. You understand? So that is what I actually plan to do. Or what we can actually do is that we can also say, yeah, we need to create all of the values for previous year, all of the measures that are created for previous year. You saw the formula I used, so you can use the same formula to create the previous year. And then you now create the previous selected year, right? From the values that you have, created here. And then you pass it into this. And so maybe what I'll do is to just share with you the final, implementation that has the the year on year as well as the year on year percentage. So you can, so this is a simple, way to, get your financial income statement. So I know it's not too straightforward, but at least you have an idea of the concept. It's also pretty much a new concept to me, but I realized that it's been integrated into the responsibility of data analysts in organizations lately, and it's important that you have an idea. And having to do this and speak about it in any interview would definitely, shoot up your value. So I hope this is I'm able to, this makes some sense to you. Like I said, I'm going to share with you a final project. You can see, I can switch between the year and see, right? But of course, the essence of income statement is to have the previous year beside it, the percentage change, the change as well as the percentage change, right? So you can do all of that. And of course, if you can't, when I send to you, you should be able to pick where the formulas are and how I was able to represent them, right? I hope this makes sense to you, and you at least you're able to get value for the time that you have spent today. So if you have any question, please ask myself, and maybe any other person can actually respond to you. Any question, guys? We've overshot our time, and then we need to close out. Any questions? Am I audible? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, sure, we can hear you.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think for my part, I think I have to, because I didn't do any hands-on. So I think I'll just go through the recording and get an hands-on. Then any questions I'm concerned out.
Yeah,
Reach
like
out
I said,
first.
a leverage on the community. We have a community on Discord. We also have a WhatsApp community. So join the community. If you can ask any question or challenge that you have about this or any other one on it, and then somebody will respond to you. I would definitely respond to you. So it was intentional not to, allow anyone to do hands-on here. Because it should take, definitely, I can tell you, there probably might not be any way that you understand it properly if you are trying to do the hands-on. So what you need to do is sit with it, because it's pretty relatively a new concept. In fact, Power BI or some of the thought leaders, they continue to release new stuff about this and how different ways you can do this. So this is more like a kind of the basic way you can do it. There are some couple of other ways, right? So do we get to have mentorship after these classes for people like us that would like to fully transit to tech and work with it? So this is why I keep saying that you need to leverage on our community, right? You pick up something, you're trying to transition, you pick up something and you're struggling with it, you need help. So you can easily just drop a message in the channel, your problem, share it, and then we'll be able to, respond to you and say, this is what you're doing right, this is where you're getting it wrong, so do this and this. So there's a way the community will help you a lot. The community has worked for me. Even till today, I have some other external community I joined that when I have issues, I go there and then they are able to provide answer. You understand, for me. So please leverage on the community. And also, for those who are, how to join the community. So I think a mail will be sent to you. So just pay attention to the mail. I'll get them to send a mail to you. Whether it's the WhatsApp community or the Discord community, anyone you intend to join, please join. And then we'll send a mail to you that you can use to join. All right. So any other question before we go? All right, guys. So, okay. Question? YDM, do you have a question? YDM? Okay. All right. So, guys, if there are no questions.
No questions for now.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. So, cheers. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we catch up some other time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. All right.